Your timing is amazing. We've just gone around the table. Everybody's introducing themselves. So who are you?
I'm somebody from Material Science and Engineering Department, professor there. So I've been collaborating with Roger for 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
So it's been a while.
So when I arrived, I forget what industry your wife is in Korea.
She was traveling back and forth.
Yeah, no, but she was in advertising. No.
Oh, she was a news anchor.
A news anchor in Korea, and they wanted to publish a book about ATEC.
ATEC, and before that, it's an introduction to nanotechnology.
To nanotechnology, okay. Were they children's books?
Not really for general public, but have some element that.
Lots of illustrations, I remember. Okay, so you're going to present second, and Sujan will help you get set up. So Amy, the floor is yours. I think you should. Yeah, I think you should move, Suvash, because.
Ended up talking about fluids and atoms. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting was how he asked the question, are atoms racist? And
Are atoms racist, Moon? No, you're wrong.
and that made me start thinking. I thought it was an interesting take on looking at a story and looking at how certain things can be considered racist or not, and what impact that they have on us. And so I started thinking about my books and some of the beliefs and doctrines that we're sometimes formed with, and those things can be racist. Those things, racism is a system of managing somebody that is below you, but we can't be president. And so we have our beliefs and our systems and our thoughts based on how we're raised, what areas we were raised in, the people that were around us. And so one of the things that I tried to do and thought about as I was writing these books was, how do you create something where kids are included? I mean, no matter where they come from, no matter how they were raised. And so that was a lot of the things that I tried to do. I think you guys got Unbearable and Nacho Cheese. And one of the things like Nacho Cheese is we had some cheese proprietors that were mice. They were trying to create their shop Cheese-a-Breeze and become successful with it, but they always have those antagonists. You had somebody you had the rats that were trying to get them. You had a couple of bullies that were trying to take their cheese shop down. And so I think that's what I always tried when I was trying to do my books. I think Mama Why Babies Cry was my first book. And I always wanted to create books that had diversity and inclusion in them. For people to be able to see characters of themselves inside of the books. And that Mama Why Do Babies Cry, if you look at it, I tried to include a lot of different races, Hispanic. And you had starting off with a young lady asking why that age-old question, why do babies cry? But babies make messes, they take baths. But what I liked is the diversity in it. And my illustrator for this one was from South Africa. So I've reached out to a lot of different cultures around the world and getting these books done. Nacho Cheese. I was in Brazil. Yeah. So he wrote, sorry about that, I'll get that later. So Nacho Cheese is about two cheese proprietors who are having trouble in getting their cheese shop up and running. They've had problems with their parents. Their parents have died. but they have these rats coming into town trying to take over. And so what they're trying to do is to save their town and at the same time make money. Unbearable. It's about a gruffy bear who runs into a young boy in the woods whose parents have left and out in the woods. And so he's trying to teach this child how to grow up. So he's kind of gruffy and mean to him. But at the same time, the young boy is learning a lesson on how to take care of himself. And it's interesting that the parents just left him out there, and the bear is like, okay, how do you leave this boy out here by himself? But the grumpy bear also taught him how to grow up, how to become a young man. And so that was the purpose of this book. Just Fred. It's one of my first books. I think this was my first. Cautious Fred was the second. And one of the things that I took with Cautious Fred is natural predators that frogs encounter in nature, similar to what we were talking about, the atoms and different things that happen. And so what I was trying to teach is kids how to be safe and understand situational awareness using a lot of the natural predators of frogs in the wilderness. So that one was a good one. So if you guys want to take a look at it, it's a rhymey story, and it's good for young kids. One that I've done lately, Attitude Race. And this was created from artists in Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Yeah, created them in Ukraine for us right before a lot of the war and stuff broke out. So we can kind of hoping things calm down because we got a couple.
You were working with them before the war broke out?
Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Coincidence.
And so I know after it broke out, she's kind of gone by the wayside. She's starting to do a little bit of art now, but I don't want to reach out to her yet because I know things are still kind of not right there. In my last couple of books, which are actually my first or second, was the Asian Bigfoot series. So these were kind of my babies. It's about a baby that has a big butt, but has explosive farts, which are his superpowers. So
Ether.
yeah, and he has a couple friends. He has Alex, which is one of his best friends, which is African American little girl who has a spirit of my daughter, actually. She has a very feisty spirit, and so she's teaching AB how to grow up, but he's also protective for her. She's her best friend. She's his best friend. And they also have another child in there called Yoder. Yeah, and his name is really Theodore, but he has this odor, so people are always always bullying him because of the odor. And those three have gone together and become a team and helping each other out because they have these super bullies and this Dr. Ian, who's also the nemesis in the story and giving them a hard time. So that's it for now. Do you guys have any questions?
100 questions.
Okay.
Would maybe Moon Kim can react before he gives his presentation. What ideas did you spring into your mind listening to Amy?
Well, besides the art for social messaging stuff, but so I was expecting something related to accents.
Okay.
Are you talking about what connections that
The connection
you have
was
in mind?
what took me when I first started thinking about it. Dr. Molina asked me if atoms were racist. And what I took and put inside of the slide wasn't necessarily my words, it was his words about the racism of atoms, because I thought it was a good talking point, a good thought. And racism exists in lots of other parts of nature. And it was a, it was a good thought. Mine wasn't necessarily on the race, on the atoms of racistness, but the racism that exists in all of our lives in one point or another. And my thought was based on children that they suffer through racism too, and trying to put something in each of the stories that show inclusion, and dealing with some of the things that we as all people go through from a child to adult. And those are things are represented in my story.
Let me undo my shirt. So this narrative I'm going to give you is due to a lab alumnus. Her name is Ayen Deng. He was born in South Sudan in the north of Africa. The family, when she was about 6, became refugees from South Sudan to Kenya, and then from Kenya to Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia to Florida. She wanted to be a physicist, but she found me and worked in the lab. But talk about a young woman with anxieties, and by total coincidence, she just texted me because she wished she could be at this presentation. And it was during the pandemic, and somehow we had one of those stupid discussions about COVID-19. We didn't have the data yet. Did COVID attack people of different races more than other races? And then as the months went by, the answer no, was COVID-19 is not racist. Now, some microbes, like sickle cell anemia, attack certain ethnicities more than other ethnicities. So viruses can be racist, but not all of them. And then, so naturally, I'll tell it verbally before I throw it on the board. What about small molecules? They're racist. Well, a protein. I think protein loves to be eaten by humans of any color, to my knowledge. Well, I know some humans are vegetarian, but they don't eat meat in India, or they're vegan. So yeah, maybe proteins are not racist. So maybe between the virus and the protein, you get small enough. The water molecule's racist. They love to be drunk by animals of any color, of any type. Water just wants to be drunk by somebody else. Water is not racist. Proteins, not. Viruses, maybe. Are atoms racist? Then that was easy. An atom is smaller than the wavelength of light. Is that right? What?
Much smaller.
Much smaller. So there's no way an atom can have color.
That's right. You should say.
Scientists lie when they show you pictures of atoms that are red, blue, and green connected by sticks. No, atoms do not have color, and atoms. And so we started working during the pandemic on a children's book, which we never finished, with a young woman in Mexico who was an illustrator. And if I'd known about you, we would have reached out to you. So it's a joke. The people don't realize that certain concepts like racism only exist at certain scales. If you're too small, you cannot be racist because you're smaller than the wavelength of light. And it turns out a friend of mine is on the IPCC, International Climate Change, whatever, the panel for climate change. And he published an article that I edited, a cheese diagram. So this is time. This is size. This is nano, very, very small. This is macro. Okay, the oldest human being just died. She was 119, I think. The human beings live to 119 years. They're born and die. And he said, you know, some concepts are scale dependent. Racism exists at this scale, but not that scale. The scale of galaxies and planets, racism is a meaningless concept. And so the key point was, you know, there are all these things we generalize about, but it depends on the scale that you're addressing. And so that's what originated Ayan Deng's, I mean, the similar discussion. And she's back in Florida right now with her family, and she's studying computer science, not physics anymore. So anything else?
Oh, I do have a question
For
you.
Amy? Yeah.
Well, no, I was going to ask you a question. The implication is that because they have no color, there is no sense of racism.
It's an analogy because
Okay,
scale, because at the
I
scale
know.
of atoms, color is a meaningless
Well, no,
quantity.
as
Well,
is a lot of things.
I don't think atoms have minds.
I was just saying,
What?
I wanted
What,
to-
Moon? Do atoms have
Well,
minds?
because the racism, by definition, is the one that we create. Then you don't really communicate down to the nanoscale or ET scale. So if we go down to that scale, we are able to communicate within that scale.
Okay.
And racism. So the kind of racism you're talking about is surrounding us within our timelines and with our size limit.
And the structure and system within which we're working, and according to which we make differentiations at the level of scale. Right, yeah.
I mean, the other point that Ramon made, which is so simple that it's stupid. Do you know when the first microscope was invented?
The microscope you're talking.
Microscope.
But not optical, so.
Well, no, the thing that allowed you to see very small things.
Well, it depends upon how small the thing is. Even in the Greek age, they use the kind of telescope to see the ships in the distance.
Now that's a telescope, not a
That's
microscope.
But
Telescopes were invented before microscopes. Microscopes were invented in 1500 or something.
Like a 16th century.
16th century. And one of Ramon's points is human beings study things mostly at their own scale. We don't study things that happen once every billion years. Who's going to do a PhD if it happens once every billion years? We study things that happen frequently enough. You can study them during a PhD. Now it just makes you think a little bit that human beings didn't look at invent the microscope till 1500. Well, there were thousands of years of people studying the world before then, trying to understand it, but we were only studying things in this at our scale. If it changes too slowly, if it changes too quickly, we don't care about it. If it's too big or too small, we don't care about it until very recently. So then his provocation is, what other scale should we investigate? And so I'm going to ask Suvash, who's given me a reading list. So, and I don't know you well enough to, I know you're willing to be put on the spot, but his thesis, no, he's been taking my grad seminar and we had a very good meeting on Thursday. He is very interested in the concept of the spirit. Turns out the book series that I'm in charge of published a book by Linda Henderson, an art historian at UT Austin, on the fourth dimension in art and science. Why in the 1880s the people become convinced, both in the art world, in the science world, that there were higher dimensions, which you could call spirit. And then electromagnetism was discovered. Did you know there are waves in this room you cannot see or smell or touch? It's just electromagnetism. Well, that's a kind of spirit. We can't control it. But it does affect us. If you put your cell phone in your brain too much, you get brain cancer, maybe. And so, thank you for latching on to that racism is a scale-dependent prejudice. Now, sexism, I don't think is scale-dependent.
Well, maybe.
Even Professor Kim talked about the communication, that humans cannot communicate with the nanoscale objects. Maybe that's why the racism isn't there. So maybe racism is just a human concept.
We need to communicate
Humans are not-
spiritually to atoms.
Would you consider bacteria and viruses a nanoscale? Because we had a conversation about the artist who made the Manhattan, and then he was looking into the different areas that Brooklyn was having soil composition.
Oh,
And so that the whole idea there was
okay.
do these
So
objects that are
I
the
think,
nanoscale.
Andrew, you missed this watering hole. So 2 weeks ago, we had a speaker who's, that's the whole idea of a watering hole. You're not thirsty all the time. Give me a break. No, but seriously, thank you for reminding me. It's worth. So I met him originally because when I arrived here, he was at UT Southwestern, the medical school, getting his PhD in medical research. And he had put on an art exhibition in Dallas of art made by cancer patients, which I went to see. And I got to talk to it because he was also an artist as well as a cancer researcher. So he's now in New York organizing exhibitions. And so he gave a watering hole talk. And it turned out one of the things he'd done, and this fits into Jenny Whiteman, he went around Manhattan and he made a big plastic dish, Petri dish, the shape of Manhattan. And he got mud from the different neighborhoods in New York and put them in the Petri dish to see what they grew. Almost a Jenny Whiteman. It wasn't paintings, it was more like a mud sculpture. And so, yeah.
One of the things he proposed is there's different areas of Brooklyn that have different compositions, whether it be economic or racial, and do the microorganisms that exist have anything to do with the cancer
Certain
rate in that
community-
area?
Latino communities eat a lot of peppers, so there's a lot of pepper pollution in the soil.
Yeah. The way people exist in their environment influences the environment, and how does it influence you back? And what's the system
The
that?
neighborhood concept.
Yeah. And how is it at a neighborhood scale, or is it all the
But it
island
would
of
also
Manhattan?
be- And how architecture gets.
It's a
I
huge.
mean, it's completely.
No, but he was using his art skills to grow
Yeah,
mold on dirt he picked from different neighborhoods in Manhattan, and he created an artwork which you had to wait for months and see what color the mud became. And yes, it may be just pollution from the construction site, or it may be the diet of the people who live there and they throw banana skins if you're a banana eater.
I ask you a different kind of question. One of the most interesting aspects
Mhm.
of your presentation and the work that you do is that you're in this collaborative relationship with all of these artists.
Mhm.
And I'd like you to talk about a little bit, how does that work logistically, going from your words and finding someone else to sort of bring those words to life visually? How does that work? Or could you give us a couple examples of how that?
I'm pretty good at sketching.
Mhm.
And so I think about this.
No, but you mentioned Brazil and Ukraine.
Ukraine. My first artist was actually from South Africa with his mama.
I mean, how does that happen?
have no trouble reaching out and asking questions. The fortunate part about it, a lot of the artists that I've dealt with, some of these were their first books and people reaching out. So we were able to collaborate well, and I am part of us collaborating. I got them out there with other artists seeing them. So I have very specific ideas. I just don't. I'm not an artist, so I'm good at providing them exactly what I want, how I want it, the coloring and stuff like that. And I've been blessed to have been working with a lot of artists that are very talented and are able to pull my idea and bring it to fruition. So, and I'm like, okay, who else can I reach out to across the world? And that's the fun part, is you get to see all these different talents and work with these people who have that knowledge and that creativity. Sometimes
So do you connect by the internet?
Hmm?
Do you connect online?
Yep, I just send them an email and we have.
Amazing.
Yep, the ticket.
Okay, I apologize, everybody. We're gonna switch to Moon Kim.
It's not done.
Yeah.
But I'm
No, but you have to-
Oh, I see.
So
I want you to hear at least two pitch.
I enjoy it better that way because my ideas can come out, because a lot of times the publishers, they can take it and say, we don't want that direction, and they'll take you in a different direction, where this has allowed me to express my creativity and to follow my vision and not necessarily a publisher's vision.
Okay, Moon Kim, we'd like to switch to you. Vic, did you have any questions? You're online.
Hi, everybody. No, I'm just following this wonderful Friday watering hole conversation. Congratulations, Miss Amy Winfield. You have quite the portfolio on Amazon. So very intriguing work. Congratulations.
While they're getting set up, do you have any inspirations? What you made me think of was Mr. Rogers. I saw something recently where he was explaining Robert F. Kennedy's death to kids, and like this challenging, how do we explain something the children are seeing on TV? People also brought up like 9/11, that maybe that didn't get translated to children's education properly. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Present, I think so.
You know, racism is one of these subjects I feel like that most people kind of don't necessarily want to touch on when it comes to children's literature. I feel like
Out of it so ingrained into our system that people think it's normal and natural, and you just don't touch it. And I think it created some barriers to other children, because some are experiencing and some have no idea about what's happening. So the two don't necessarily come together. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to know
in the chat, you
to
can
deal with a lot of artists around the world, because they would have different perspectives and different things that they're experiencing in their culture that I would have no idea about. And I think what I've noticed is they brought their talents and stuff to a lot of my drawings and stuff like that based on their experience, like the Ukraine. The lady in the Ukraine, she could take it and took it to a different level, and it was like, I have a couple more books for her. I'm kind of waiting for her to calm down and when I reach out to her, but I'm noticing she's starting to draw again and stuff like that. And so I could see how that creativity with them, and it feels good to be able to talk to people in diverse areas.
Okay, I have another thought, unless someone else wants to jump in. So yesterday, as I was going to sleep, I heard the news that a school principal in Florida was fired because his teachers had been showing pictures of Michelangelo's David, naked man. And he was fired for showing one of the greatest artworks in the Middle Ages. Now, it's true that the popes also put fig leaves on Michelangelo's David, Did you see that news, Andrew? I mean,
So you have to ask yourself,
Go to the PowerPoint app.
before we have the typical,
Then you can just present it from here.
this is like preposterous,
Yeah.
and no one
okay,
sees
good.
beauty.
That's the thing.
We have to first ask
Oh,
ourselves.
you can just
who was-
make it
who are they
landscape.
showing it? If they were showing it to a group of middle school students, a group of high school students perhaps,
Okay.
might have an argument. And if it's down below that.
yeah, that wasn't the case.
Then,
That's-
you know, but but even that, even as such, it says more about. We live in a really interesting time. Where people feel like they want small government and independence. Yet they want you to dictate against their biases. And that's.
No government, but we want to forbid certain things.
And so,
Because you're presenting.
I'm glad that art gets placed in the center of a lot of these arguments. Because it's probably a safe place
I think we can
to,
go wherever you need to.
have these
Because this
discussions.
you're presenting in
What
the heat
happens is that
This-
the size of
this
this
is
megaphone,
displayed.
you know,
Then
you don't really get to the roots of these things because
Perfect.
once it becomes a national story, you can sort of dismiss it. But I think at the local level, it's a very interesting debate. I'd like to be in, I had a debate like that in Georgia. With my homeowners association.
You wanted to paint a mural of.
I had a sculpture in my front yard and they told me to take it down.
Was it an obscene sculpture?
To them it was, yeah,
Why?
because they didn't understand it.
Okay, is it the one that we have a copy of here?
No, it was actually at a Kuaba. It was about a 12-foot, 10-foot, 10 or 12-foot, a Kuaba doll, which is a figure from Ghana that women wrap around their waist when they're pregnant with children, or around their back, and carry it when they're pregnant with children because it sort of holds the ideals of the beauty of the Ashanti culture with them. And they found that now it wasn't that kind of story, it was a different kind of story. It's a Kuaba. Look it up on the internet.
Anyway,
Kuaba.
this is Andrew Scott's
But-
sculpture.
But it was interesting because they felt that it was obscene. And I told them, I said, I feel like most of your yard art is obscene.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna,
I want to make this, Amy, she omitted one fact.
Yeah.
These books are illustrated by these people all over the world.
yeah,
Every illustration from the moment one to the end, we come up with the design, with the look, with the placement of them on the page. They don't do that but use their skill to draw it.
yeah.
We design all of this. We are the designers and they are the illustrators.
Yeah, and they're at a distance, which is a difficult kind of collaboration.
That's
If they're
very-
down the street, then you can go and
Yeah.
tear something up and say no.
We're going to bed and vice versa. So.
Okay, Moon Kim, let's change scale.
Okay, so
Can you go to screen view?
He's already presenting.
No, but we have all this, the relevant stuff here.
Already pinned him. This is.
No, but then is it on the other screen too? No. So you may have to move to see the.
No, we can just get down the blinds.
This is a low-tech, high-tech lab. And Moon, you have to introduce space travel and nanoscience. Okay, that's good. Oh, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. But anyhow, so
Can we change the,
What?
you need to change it so we just have the screen.
We just have the screen. Actually, he's presenting from his phone. That's why this is happening.
Okay.
So many years ago, UT Dallas featured the several ATEC faculty, including Roger and the others, said that nowadays the disciplines are not really distinct from each other. So there was a title called Blurred Lines. In that, Kathleen was features, and can music make you smarter? And there are a few other things. And Roger was featured when art becomes science. And our feature is when science becomes art. Educated in the background, also on the left-hand side, the big green stuff is the electron microscope that I actually use.
That's a microscope. It's the size of a human being.
But that's the
I thought microscopes were small.
PM, but that's not a big one. In the old days, about 20 years ago, the people were building a 1 million electron volt or 2 million electron volt microscope. The size is like a 2-story high. Then you have to have a long arm to adjust it. You can imagine. So I have written a couple of books. One is on the art and technology, both in English and Korean version. And then this is a trailer that has a sound, but
Okay, you just.
Look like yours. Set it over.
it has about 4 different parts. Featured by two local media that my wife and I studied. So just marriage between artists and the scientists or technologists, as you can say. Part one is the visual art and the science behind it throughout human history. The second part is the architecture. A lot of architectures that you see has a lot of science and engineering concepts.
Those are semiconductor strips.
Not really. Depends on how you say it. And then the third part was the fashion and technology. Okay, the kind of fabric that we make these days and the stuff like that has a lot of technology built in. And nowadays you're also talking about wearable electronics and stuff like that. And your fashion can be a energy generator from the solar powers, etc. Or even
And there's now clothing that changes color.
changing the colors and then also self-powered and stuff like that. And the first part was the art and technology, as you're familiar with. Yeah. But if you look at art and science, it all came from Greek word techne, and then separate from that one's the techniques, and the other one is arts, also became an art. So art and technology is not a separate thing; it came from the same mother. That way. Then the second book I wrote is Hello Nano, in Korean and the English. And then
Did you know about the book?
Yeah, I looked at the Amazon, I looked inside, I saw it, hello there. Geared toward children.
yeah,
I didn't want them to enjoy.
well, they advertise it. It's geared to children, but also it's good for a general public who are not in the nanoscience area, and also translated in the Spanish.
See, and his atoms are not colored, they're white. Oh, that's racist.
And then of course this is the trailer.
Just increase the volume and mute yourself. In the meeting. Okay, let's try. You're connected over here because the people are online.
Nano's first ebook.
Yeah, it has a lot of illustration, slideshows, and especially for iBook. And also you can use your iPad to control the motion of the, for example, has a one program for the chemotherapy concept. And the has a to control the direction of the medicine to find the cancer and cure the cancer. So those kind of concepts are there too.
Oh, so you rotate it and then the
Yeah.
chemical flows and kills the cancer. You-
So that this Hello Nano is the character that I used for my book. It's a very fun music to it, but anyway, so skip that. And so the nano world, and since we are talking about, as Roger mentioned, we are talking about different length scale, size scale. And this is the one that the National Science Foundation put together more than 20 years ago in the early 1990s when they put together a program on the National Initiative on Nanotechnology. So you're starting from the human being and then going down in scale and the viruses and all the way down to atoms and also the man-made and also the
The left column is things that are in the natural world, the right-hand things are the human-made.
It is very well two dimensions. So that what I have done is that make this one into a 3D so you can actually explore in the virtual reality.
One of Moon's key collaborators is a former ATEC student. His name is
Click.
Aaron Click. You remember Aaron Click? He graduated soon after I got here.
Not really, but it's just a different object at different length scale. So as you can shrink yourself down to their kind of length scale, you can see all these different ones. And you can stop at any kind of object. You can walk around.
See what it looks like from the back.
Yeah, until you go all the way down to the
Are these symbolic representations of the objects or actual?
actual representations
Of the object.
object.
So as you go down the nano pipe, does it move towards, does it take a strong turn towards symmetry?
Well, it depends upon a lot of materials that we deal with has a symmetry down to atomic scale. The atoms are not really random. And for example, the cell phone that you use has a lot of silicon crystals. And the silicon crystal, if you go down to atomic scale, they do have a very pronounced symmetry. It's not atoms. So some of the material has a very random structure, but most of the material that we actually utilize has a very periodic symmetric structure.
Why?
Because how they make the property of that particular materials. And then there is.
No, but isn't it that it takes less energy to structure a material that's symmetric than one that's not?
Yes and no, in a way.
Related to like chemical composition or is that why?
Well, when you're talking about chemical composition, then you're talking about more than one element.
Right.
And but even for the single element system,
Right.
and then they can exist in different structures. For example, carbon is a very easy one for us to understand. You use a pencil.
Right.
Pencil has a graphitic structure, which is kind of layered structures.
Right.
And then if you exfoliate one layer out of the graphite, that became the famous graphene everybody talks about. And then also you like diamond. Diamond is also the same carbon, but it's a three-dimensional structure. So the carbon arrangement is different. Okay, they have a different symmetry, gives a different properties.
Okay, I'm going to bring the space scientists into the discussion. So interstellar clouds have all kinds of chemicals in them that condense and crystallize. Are they symmetric structures in interstellar clouds too?
Well, if you're talking about the gaseous species and the monatomic gases,
Yeah.
They don't have any.
Yeah, no, but then they condense and then
when
there's
they
interstellar dust for instance,
Yeah.
the common term.
In that particular dust scale, it may have a very short range order.
But I would say that they're symmetrical, but they're fractal in expression.
Short range order was his word. So they're not totally random. They have short range order, and that's different than symmetry.
And the fractal is a different thing.
I know, it's like self-repeating outwardly.
Yeah, but within the fractal, it depends upon the length scale.
Mhm,
And within the fractal, it has a periodic structures.
right.
And then it just propagates in a different direction, but and so it has a kind of symmetry built in.
Mhm.
It's not like a snowflakes.
Yeah.
There's
Or
another-
I'm thinking about his analogy of the space dust or the space cloud, where you have like a very large object that has a molecular structure, and if we go in, it's symmetrical, but as we go out, it's symmetrical, but it expresses itself fractally.
Fractally. Or...
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brandon.
So do you ever work with any biological organisms, or are you just strictly working like material science, chemistry?
Mostly inorganic materials.
Okay.
But from time to time, we are looking at some biological materials.
Okay.
In interaction with the inorganic, surroundings.
Okay, so I worked with an entomologist that actually had a SEM in his office. I don't know why. It was a hobby.
Scanning electron microscope.
And so, speaking about like symmetry in biology, you see a ton of symmetry, just everywhere. So, like everything that I saw was symmetrical. So it's interesting when you go to the chemical physics side that it becomes a little bit more randomized.
Yeah, but when you see the molecules,
Mhm.
it's much bigger
Mhm.
than actual atoms.
Okay, next slide.
Then once you have those three-dimensional.
Question.
Oh, that's a question. I'm taking a semiconductor science class and we talk about structures, Gilby.
Okay,
Yeah, and we were talking about the most interesting one was a diamond lattice. I don't know if you there's a specific mathematical expression for the distance between atom from the center.
right.
I don't know. I think it's symmetrical if you look at it in a certain angle. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so actually, are you familiar with the periodic table of elements?
Yes.
Starting from hydrogen and all that, each element has its own specific structure associated to it, depends upon, but most of them they do. And then they do have particular structure called base center, the cubic structures, the diamond cubic structures, etc. There are about 7 different systems, but they all have a different arrangement. That is for a single element, but if you bring binary to element or ternary, quaternary, it depends upon, and that they do form a different structure, for example. Then depends upon the structures and depends upon dimension, you can actually calculate the distance between 2 neighboring atoms and stuff.
And you just stumbled into a typical quandary that is mathematics a human invention or a human discovery? So does the same mathematics apply everywhere in the universe? Or it depends on the species of animal that developed that?
I think Vic's got something wants to comment about it.
Both, both.
Both.
Both. It's both invented and,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I've actually heard a really good quote from, I forgot, it was a really famous world-class physicist. I can't remember his name, but he said that the mathematics that we use almost perfectly describe the universe. The physics, I guess he was trying to relate physics to the math.
Yeah, it is a little bit spooky.
I think that I want to stand on something and take it for whatever you want. For me, the only truth that exists is in mathematics.
Oh, my God.
Everything else is just conjecture.
I'll show you some examples of mathematics.
Okay, keep going, Moon.
Because I think if there's going to be any interstellar conversations going on, it's going to be a mathematic discussion.
But anyhow, so I deal with a lot of 3-dimensional objects. So the visualization is very essential to have. So this is one way to show the 3-dimensional feature as a hologram. So I can have this kind of
Talk about art and technology. No, art, science and technology.
Yeah, so what you see on there is iPad or your screen. You can put a prism on top of that, and you can actually see the hologram of those three-dimensional features. Yeah. Let's talk about nano art. This particular one, you're familiar with Pablo Picasso's famous painting, stuff like that. How much does it cost for him to actually paint each piece?
Excuse me, how much time did it take for?
How much cost?
How much cost?
How much paint did he have to buy?
I mean, it's oil. It's oil paint. It's incredibly expensive. It's oil.
No, but how many times did he repaint it?
Oh, okay.
But actually, let's say $1,000, you know, to be more expensive, like a $10,000.
Yeah.
So why are we valuing it? Why are we imbuing it with value on a cost basis?
That is also supply and demand issue.
I think that's like, that's not a good way to talk about art. It doesn't, just because people.
Just because you make it cheaply doesn't mean it's better.
No, but just because people are willing to expend, large amounts of money for it, doesn't really confer any real value on it. We're buying into the money laundering game.
Well, I mean, there's some things like lapis.
Oh dear, we have a criminal room. He's a nanoscientist. He's money laundering.
No, that's not how I'm not gonna sit in a room and let art be, let the value of art be established in that manner, because I think it's a bad fallacy.
Contradiction in
Because Van Gogh, let's take the classic example of Van Gogh, who never made a penny selling any of his artwork, but
his brother bought it.
Here, I'm not talking about the actual price of each item. I'm talking about, say the Picasso has to spend $1,000 to actually paint one piece. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about actual
Cost of production, not the value on the market. Yeah, no, okay, no, Moon, you're in trouble
I'm
here.
not sure you made a value statement.
No, I didn't.
I don't think you made a value statement at all.
No, he's about to say, I can make art very cheaply and that's what's good.
Let you complete your thought. I'm gonna be quiet.
Well, what I'm saying is that even though now it's valued at millions of dollars, but a different subject, but the cost of producing this particular art piece is maybe only a few $100s, maybe $1,000.
Or $10 at a time.
Well, $10, whatever. It's always very cheap.
Okay, keep
That's what I'm
going,
saying.
Moon.
I don't understand why that statement has to be made at all.
You understand why I'm saying that?
I don't understand why you're saying that. I don't understand the basis for the statement.
He makes art very cheaply, therefore it's a good idea. Is that what you're telling us?
In comparison to nano art, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
For
Okay,
anybody to draw, do
with a pencil.
you may just need papers and pencils, maybe in a graphite crayons or the paint. Okay, it doesn't cost.
Graffiti art is just spray paint.
It doesn't cost them much.
Okay, does that affect the perceived value for the,
The value, I'm not talking about the value here. I'm just talking about, as you said.
but does it
production.
make people happier if the art is cheaper?
No.
I'm not going into that direction, so.
No, I think it's, and let me sharpen the point a little bit so that I hope that I'm interpreting it properly. And you're saying that the tools associated with creating objects and images using nanotechnology are a lot more expensive than those that you'd find in the traditional fine arts.
Correct.
Okay, but let me give you the follow-up statement to that, and that is, so what?
He might get there.
I think.
He might get there.
I think we're into Greek philosophy and Socratic dialogue.
Well,
Go ahead, Moon, keep going.
in a sense that I'm fortunate enough
Yes.
to have an access to that tool.
Oh, I'm not mad at you at all. I like it. I like it.
Keep going, keep going.
For us,
Right.
any kind of nano art stuff, we need some tools.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the tools that I use, it's called electron microscope.
Mhm.
Or
Really expensive.
So in that particular case, instead of using paint, we use electrons. Also, we use ions. Okay, And then cost of each instrumentation is quite expensive, at least $1 million. Nowadays can go up to about $5 million, even higher. But that's something that you.
Okay, you're on a slippery slope here where money enters the aesthetic
Yeah,
discussion.
So I'm using very expensive brush. Let me put it there.
Congratulations.
Condolences.
So that's the brush. Then I need to have an ingredient. Okay, in a sense that what's pictured on the left-hand side is the photo of electron transmission electron microscope. And then one is in the middle is the component of the microscope has a source, electron source, some optics, even the optical microscope has to have a lens. So electron has to have an electromagnetic lens. And then, etc., you have to have a sample. Then part of the sample can be enlarged or manipulated, whatever, then produce an image. Okay. And then also mathematical term. It has a wave function of a plane wave going through the sample interaction with a lot of quantum mechanical
Mathematics.
and etc. But then you have some image. The contrast image can be interpreted as a function of the electron beams, the sample potential, etc., all mathematical forms. But you're not interested in mathematical.
If that's the nature of the tool.
That's the nature of the tool.
And how you get it to express your artistic intent, it becomes very important.
Yes, initially I was not really interested in artistic form of this. It's more like the scientific information I like to get out of the sample that I'm interested in. So now that Nano Art, what you see on the right-hand side is Nano Art is that discipline discovers and accentuate the artistic beauty of nanoscale objects. That can be a natural thing, that can be a man-made. And so what you see on the right-hand side is an example of a nano.
So each spheroid is an atom, or?
So I have a more illustration, but as you can see, it has a more or less like a flower shape. And the yellow one corresponding to one individual atoms of molybdenum.
With the blue.
The one in
liquid.
the middle has a six round shaped one is made out of a molybdenum. Okay, so that one each flower composed of 12 atoms, 6 atoms each of a molybdenum and tellurium. So the space blue in between the two nanoflowers is called a Van der Waals force. This is kind of very weak force, but it's weak enough so it can be slided in. You can actually scotch tape and pull it out. But it's also is the form that actually hold the two neighboring flowers together.
So it's a hexagonal morphology.
Hexagonal morphology.
Symmetric.
How did you
Very
color
symmetric.
this? How did you color this? Doesn't.
Fake colors.
It's a pseudo color.
Oh, so you're lying.
No.
You are making art. You're lying.
No, this is an illustration for you. Use an illustrator, right? To make your.
Okay, next slide.
Wonderful. I like it.
All right. So since you mentioned the Van Gogh's very famous Starry Night, and so that scale is about 74 centimeter by 92 centimeter. You can create in a nanoscale like this one. Okay. So total length scale is about 12 micrometer by 15 micrometer. It's smaller than.
Amazing. So you were able to imitate.
Okay.
You're able to imitate the same shades at a scale 1 billion times smaller.
But this is the one that I actually asked my graduate students to make it as part of their training of this particular tool. It'll be more interesting for them to be engaged in as part of their training sessions. And of course, there's another example of Icarus has a little bit of a 3-dimensional protrusions rather than just 2-dimensional impression of that. Yeah.
He's not naked.
I actually have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned the tools involved. This reminds me of the micromechanical machines at ends. Like I know the scale may be different, but are you using the same sort of processes?
Yes, I also work with the MEMS system, also NEMS system. when you scale it from micron scale to nanoscale, that we call it NEMS. It's a micro electromechanical system. The length scale is could be a micron scale or the nanoscale, but it has two functionality. So you can provide electrical pulse to mechanically adjust it, or vice versa. Okay, so in old days,
Do you need to leave or anything?
okay, so you are familiar with the current generation of television TVs, right? Flat screen TV. Okay? Before that, it was a CRT, cathode ray to big things. So in between them, there is a DLP, digital micrometer device manufactured by TI, Texas Instruments. So that is the core of micromechanical system. So they shine the light on this one. Each individual meter changes very quickly to reflect the light. That's how they build their DLP TV. So now it's gone, but most of these projectors has them micrometers built in. So that is the system. So I have another examples of this one.
Can I ask a question? When you nanosize the Van Gogh's Starry Night, is it a 2D process or is it a 3D process?
Just to be 2D, it can make it into 3D.
No, but when you do it, when you go through the process of taking something that's normal size and then reducing it and repeating, representing it, re-representing it at a nano size, is that a two-dimensional image? Is it a two-dimensional?
Is it a sculpture or a
Or
painting?
is it a three-dimensional process? So that the nano representation of the painting, is that also flat, or is it three-dimensionally composed of the molecular components that make up that?
It can be made into 2D. It can be made into a 3D.
So you can pile the atoms up.
So you like to know the exact process. In this particular case, that ion beam is coming down on the surface.
Sure.
And then depends upon the energy of the ion beam and also the duration of the ion beam sitting on one space, making a different depths. So if you let the ion beam sitting on one spot for a longer period of time, it goes in deeper, creating a deeper.
So it's a grayscale deformation.
Yeah, and so in this particular case, some of the areas is shallower, and some of the areas much deeper. And so when you do the imaging with the electron beam, it shows a different grayscale contrast.
Yeah, I just had an idea. So you could use this methodology to create art in zero gravity, but you could not use paint. In zero gravity, could you use this methodology that used to make these images in zero gravity?
Well, in this particular case, gravity doesn't really work, because in this particular case, we're using particles.
And electric charge.
And then it's either negatively charged or positively charged, and then they can be accelerated through a field. So
you could make your images in zero gravity. But Van Gogh could not paint Starry Night in zero gravity.
Correct.
Also, I noticed a lot of the nano art you've been showing is in grayscale, but it can also be made in color, or is it only grayscale?
Well, I said false color.
False
Pseudo
color.
color.
False color.
Pseudo color.
Pseudo color.
That's where the artistic license.
Also, isn't it so small that it literally doesn't, it's smaller than the wavelength of light
Right.
goes?
Yeah.
No, it literally can't have color.
Atoms are not racist.
Yeah,
They have
yeah,
no
yeah.
color.
Only thing that we have is a intensity variation contrast.
Mhm.
That can be color coded as a grayscale or the colors. So we use the eye-pleasing colors.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left,
Oh,
so.
I have much more to show. Anyway, so this is.
And if anybody needs to leave the watering hole, animals, if you've had enough to drink, go home. And it's not rude.
What we put question, so how did you discover that there was art in this nano art? Was this happenstance, or did you think it would be
The
there?
two things, you can find the beauty.
No, you personally, I think he's asking. Did you
Oh.
have artistic training as a scientist?
No, that's not just in general. What if did you think that there would be like microscopically, it could be image that we could see with the naked eye, that it could be considered art?
Well, I've been looking at all these nanoscopic scales since the 80s.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I've
Thank
been
you.
dealing with the microscope for a long time. And then sometimes you find something that is very pleasing to eyes and stuff like that.
And that's what, here's what I said, we were on vacation, but we saw a falling tree. And everybody was taking a picture of the tree, but I was like, no, it's something else.
Yeah.
So I went way up, moved in real close. Pretty sure what I found. There's art hidden. Hey, it's microscopic almost. But I think.
Well, I do have an example very similar to
Okay.
smaller scale, but I don't have that information. But then, yeah, so since I only have 10 minutes,
Okay.
the most exciting one is the end. And yeah, so this is when you bombard your pencil, graphite with ion beam, is curved just like this one. And I say it's a nano canyon. So when I went to Korea and Jeju Island, there's a place like this one. Wow, the different lengths.
And those are big.
Yeah, very
So those are natural rocks.
So even though in a very different length scale, similarities are there.
Okay, so you,
Well, I think, it's generally understood, or maybe not understood, that the universe repeats itself at every scale,
Yeah.
at every scale.
Well, symmetry is there.
Because there's a structural
with
underpinning.
error bars.
And so this is the example of a carbon nanotube. What you see in the middle is a 6 carbon rings hexagonal shape.
I think for fairness sake, and I'll say this, that we should only show these as in black and white as they're represented by the tool. I think that's the,
Well, not even a black and white. Just,
or grayscale, or whatever.
no, it's not even a grayscale. If you want to be exact,
Okay,
just a signal, high signal, low signal.
signal, right, it's a depth, it's a.
Oh.
for a normal map.
So you'd have to wear magnetic gloves and feel it.
But I would like to see, because often what happens with a lot of these things, I want to see, as a sculptor, right? I want to express the true nature of the tool that I'm using to make the thing. So I want to see,
I do have a nano sculptures I can show you.
yeah, but I would like to just see it
So, and yeah, so
as the tool creates it before it's affected.
9 minutes. This is the nanoparticles. We use it for catalytic reactions for different applications. Happen to have a 5-fold symmetry, which is very rare. This is an example called a nano black hole. This is something that we use for as a solar cell materials to collect. But any kind of defect within the solar cell breaking the symmetry is going to absorb light. So it's very similar to the concept of a black hole. So each one that you see is a 2 atoms side by side. Nanosons. So this particular one has a very good implication. This is the spherical particles that we actually developed to be used.
Okay, so
as a control.
Andrew, this is different. So he's lying by calling it a sun because it has the shape of the sun. Is that all right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so he's lying with color, but not with shape.
So this bright red ring is composed of iron oxide that we actually use to coat these particles so that you can actually enhance ultrasound sensing. That you can actually do some animations and solar flare.
Amazing.
And all these things. So now.
Wow. No,
Going into
that's a nano flare.
the solar flare in nanoscale.
Holy.
So this is the one that I showed you.
Yeah.
That so you can actually individual flowers coming out of that.
No, did you simulate that or they were really floating off the surface?
That's all.
Photograph it. So this one is named as an electron aurora.
Yeah, so it looks like it.
So toward the end, the sample have very, very thin, even though the largest scale is very rigid, like a silicon piece. But if you thin down to a length scale smaller than a micron, that becomes like a pigment.
The jet.
And then it scattered electrons in very different directions. So very, very similar to actual aurora. Okay, so there's called electron aurora. This is the animation of the electron arc. So this is, Roger is familiar of the galaxies that I viewed in nanoscale.
No, but it's fake, right? So
Not a fake, this is a real.
no, it's real, but it's not a cosmological distance.
Correct. So now we are shaping or transforming ourselves from the real world to the another world.
Simulated
another
world.
space,
Yeah. This is the metaverse.
called reciprocal.
Nanoverse.
The nanoverse.
Yeah, no, it's not nanoverse. This is not real world. This is called the reciprocal world. Okay, the dimension is 1 over real world size. So when our real world becomes smaller, it becomes larger, vice versa. So it has a resemblance of the galaxy, so different. So by looking at all this, that you can actually guess the crystallinity, symmetry of the.
Okay, so have you made any scientific discoveries as a result of your making nano art?
Yes, the discovery on
Therefore, scientists should fund artists.
this one is unexpected discovery. If you look at the normal diagram for stable phases, this particular one does not exist. Just happen to find it when we heat this material inside the microscope up to about 500 degrees Celsius. Then a two-dimensional sheet-like structure transform into the one-dimensional nanowire. You can, from time to time, you discover.
So this is art in service of science, not science in service of art.
All right, so let me skip all that.
Yeah, let's just run through.
Okay, so this is a impression of Andy Warhol's. So what you have is the one in the middle. One in the middle is a multi-wall carbon nanotube wrapped with the cloth.
You've gone so far beyond what I remember seeing on the walls.
Yes. Now this is the nano sculpture.
You must have tenure. You have academic freedom.
So we have a Texas nano flag, Christmas race cars, and you can actually see the dimensions. This is the world's smallest fighter jet, F-35B.
No.
This particular one has vertical takeoff and landing capabilities.
So that's and does it fly?
Flying over the airfield.
No.
Is the airfield also nano?
Yes.
Oh,
Like
my-
Nano airfield.
No.
And
You
this
have a
one-
nano sculpture flying, moving.
Do you?
That one we created.
Okay, I think Alejandro wants to build a drone that flies on the moon where there's no air. Make a nano plane.
So we structure with
Electric charge is what propulsion.
cut it out and assemble it.
I'm gonna work in those.
So you can actually visualize, go through each nano art piece, the nano gallery so available as a virtual reality. And also you can visit my webpage and then go through and enjoy some of the art pieces. It has a many collection of that, and some of them has explanation of that particular piece. Let me skip all that. And then this is the one that we studied, the Rojo and the nano art for social messaging, and some of the information that we have that can be related to the.
Okay, so that was the spread of domestic violence.
So in this case, what you're looking at is that before it was irradiated by electron beam, everything was so uniform, you don't see anything. But by the time that you actually irradiate with electron beam, then it comes out something like this. What happened is that the particular sample has a lot of hydrocarbon contamination on the surface and just waiting to be there to get, triggered by the external stimulus. In particular case, the electron beam. So it can become, for example, trees. It can become some other food. That can be related to the social messaging. Since you mentioned the Ukraine, so this particular one is some of the
This is the war in Ukraine at the nanoscale.
One on the right-hand side is reflecting, illustrating the Russian national flag color scheme. One on the bottom left is Ukraine.
And the Russians are well organized and
Organized, Ukraine used to be well organized, but because of the invasion, the Ukraine part becomes a disordered chaos.
I think that's giving too much credit to the Russians.
So this is more or less-
No, they're locked in cement. I mean, being too well organized is not a good thing.
That's right, it's like long convoy and then it's just goes.
petrified silicon. This is related to the tree rings. So this is a very small scale, micron scale. The scratches on the silicon wafers has this kind of features, but it was artificial intelligence modified called AI nano art, which I'm going to show you. So that's
AI now. Oh my
nano
God.
art. So this is the
Who's thought of
actual
this?
nano art piece. And if you happen to like Van Gogh's sunflower, yeah, you can actually combine, and then that becomes like this.
Oh,
It picks up the color scheme and texture of the masterpiece of your choice, and put it onto the your original
I
nano.
would make the argument that, none of this gives any of this any artistic value.
Depends upon how you look at it.
Yeah, and I'm telling you how I'm just positing a position to look at it from, because there's some really very interesting aspects to what this technology can do and perhaps what it can even express. But I would go with at this point, I would go things at life scale.
okay. What is a nano emotion? Nano anger. Nano. Go ahead, Alejandro. We're about to stop for anybody that needs to leave.
It's like
So
tiny
comparing-
tears, tiny tears.
Comparing the sterilites, the life size and the nanoscale, as time passes through, which one's going to stay longer? Which one is more prone to get destroyed by time?
Well,
That's a question.
everything that you see is in digital form.
No, but the
An NFT.
The origin-
I would say that they coexist. You can't have one without the other.
Let me just show you the final piece that you can actually appreciate, the real piece. So there are a lot of examples of AI nano art, and you can go through all these galleries. Now, this is not too long ago, the professional dancer approached me that he wants to convert his 3D dancing motion into digital forms. So we worked together and used the motion capture studio here, and not just dancing, motion captured in 3D.
You're paying PAX dollars for this kind of work?
I think of worse things.
Dancing with nano. This one
Rat areas.
I just got it this morning. They worked together very hard last night.
So this is a premiere. No. That black thing is not atoms, right?
The one on the bottom is the nano art piece.
And it's a human being shrunk to the nanoscale.
Yes. So as it moves around, exert force on the nano art moves accordingly.
Okay, that got my attention. Go ahead. Alejandro.
Are there any life forms that could see these nano arts without any microscope or anything?
But ants, very small organisms with eyes.
Could be maybe it's very small organisms that could interact with these arts without the use of.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, can you see it?
Well, not me, but maybe a very small, like smaller than microorganisms.
Like a plankton or something.
I don't know what's the smallest organ.
Well, the other project I do is trying to sequence DNA going through very small nano holes. And then as the DNA goes through the nano holes, and DNA has 4 different pairs, then you can try to sequence it by monitoring the changes in the resistivity or electrical current. So that is one, thing that you can actually try.
This is nano nudity,
So this is a different.
but he's got pants on, so it's okay.
No, actually, it's a juxtaposition of 2 different scales.
Yes,
You have one object that's existing at the
This
nano
trunk.
level, and then you have another object that's
that's
existing
expanded, yeah.
at the expanded level, and that's an interesting.
So this is a more,
Proposition.
more violent, more active motion than previous one, has a different,
Yeah.
I just ask,
Oh dear.
Oh, I am so happy. I want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Because I am so happy that this type of work is going on this campus. It gives me hope. It gives me hope.
And he'll get a Nobel Prize in nano,
I'm gonna ask for.
Nano dancing.
Really cool stuff. you know?
Well, just don't try to-
appreciate the technology, because I tried the exact same thing about 10 years ago,
Mhm.
using a camera called Kinect camera, which is a depth
Yeah, I know
sensing
exactly
camera.
what you're talking about.
So to try to capture 3D motion in real time, so trying to dance with, for example, K-pop dancers.
Yeah.
So to correct your motion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so now the technology is much better. We can do much better. So now this is the one that is connecting our real world to the another world called reciprocal space. And so this is the one that you can actually see from the reciprocal space, a glimpse of a real space inside. So there's a lot of scientific explanation I have to give to that, but anyway, so that's for the wormhole, going from one space to another space. So going through real space to reciprocal space, talking about all that. So Aaron, two Aaron's working on the 3D motion capture. Taylor Greens is the social messaging part, of course, Roger and then other.
Okay, so. No, but the collision between Amy's work and your work, I mean, it's talk about a creative collision.
I know that happened in this room. No, that F-35 thing, that was wild. I cannot believe that's actually a thing that's like happening. Like, that is awesome.
Good things about this is that scientists not really connect to general public. So this is the one way to allure.
No. You're doing something much more introverted than that. You're exploring your own mind.
Well, but when you write a proposal to NSF,
Yeah.
and foundation, that you have to say something about broader impact of.
Well, certainly the fact that you can make fighter jets at the nano scale,
Fly over.
you'll be telling other people about that.
So I work over at Inserol. I see a lot of the art around there that looks like nano art. Is that yours? Yeah. Okay. So I've been looking at those for the last 6 months. I actually I support your lab through institutional risk and safety.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I've been seeing your art forever. And so yeah.
More in the basement.
Yeah. When you walk between BSB and Inserol, yeah, I have to go through there all the
I'll pull
time.
you back.
So
the artist uses canvas to paint their art.
No,
You are
5 minutes
part of
late.
this?
It's all digital.
But
Yeah.
yeah, tomorrow would be better. I'm in the middle of
And you're
colloquium
gonna
with
strand of the
running.
hair, on which surface or
Okay.
which concept are you painting that? Like, is it kind of a?
Okay, very good.
Everything is been magnified.
Okay. Really, it exists like in a nanoscale, but
Yeah.
where? On a kind of,
On the surface.
okay, of the microscope.
But you have a sample, very,
Okay.
very tiny.
Okay.
So just like your optical microscope, when you look at the microorganism, they're very
Mhm.
tiny on a petri dish.
Okay.
So you use the optical microscope to magnify it to see different part of that.
Right.
Just like that, we have a object, a sample, is very small, that go into the microscope and then typically saying that, putting up the magnification and stuff like, it's very easy term. Saying that it's much more than that. You have to go through into mathematical introduction.
so You know, on the first floor of Innsbruck, there's a clean room with lithography. So I was wondering, do you use lithography in any way to create those nanostructures, like the one that the F-35 was flying over?
Not the one that I showed.
Okay.
We use strictly the focused ion beam microscope.
Okay, so same thing.
With a nano manipulator
Okay.
to just like creating a Lego piece.
Mhm.
Okay, use an ion beam to sculpture a
Mhm.
piece. Then we use a nano manipulator to assemble it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we have a couple of raised hands online. Vic, you've already spoken. Can the other person raise their question?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your amazing work. I'm working as a scientific illustrator, and we had several projects for scientific journal covers. And I was thinking your art would be great for scientific journals like Nature. Have you ever used them for the journal covers?
I have about 11 articles. Out of them, the featured on the journal cover. But that depends upon that they choose sometimes not real images. They use some of the schematics and diagrams and stuff like that. And then from time to time they use the real images, etc.
Okay, thank you. Vic, you had something else? Or is your finger stuck?
Yeah, I think that was an artifact. Just Professor Moon, wow. I'm a fan. Keep doing what you're doing. It's so cool. I'd also like to just shout out to Mr. Shaw, one of the facilitators of Watering Hole Online, which is always so challenging to do, working with Microsoft Teams. Mr. Shaw, kudos to you, sir, and appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. And I love this watering hole, Dr. Molina. Thanks a lot, sir.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.